We're free. Yeah, let's go.
Okay. Well, I think we've waited enough. Probably time to get started. So I wanted to say thank you very much for taking the time to come and visit us on our first Fairfax Full Stack Developer Meetup. We appreciate you joining. The purpose of obviously creating this group is to create a local community here of talented peers like yourselves, where you can reach out to people, learn new technologies, ask questions, and have people that you can kind of interact with. Obviously, if you've been doing this for a while, have any questions, or you're running into challenges, things like that. So we appreciate you coming and visiting our headquarters, the 3-pillar here. And again, we're obviously the first sponsor, but going forward, we'd like to hear from all the members about new ideas. If you want to sponsor it, the next meeting, we'd love to work with you guys on that and keep it as engaging and as fun as possible. So we are going to talk about 2 hot topics today, as you're aware: Meteor and .NET Core, not Core or whatever. .NET Core? The net core. So we do an A after that, and please, you gotta eat all this food.
Yes. So, yeah, we definitely need to get the food all eaten up. I'm just going to do a brief statement about 3-pillar, just so that you all know what we're about, and then I'll turn it over to the presenters. So I lead the U.S. engineering team here at 3-pillar. We are a product development services company, so we build software products for our clients. Here in the U.S., we work on small, fast engagements and a lot with new technologies and help drive that into our clients. And so, we wanted to be part of a community who shares these same technologies and the same values we do, so that we can take part in that and get to know each other and everything like that. So tonight, Derek and Patrick are going to talk about 2 of the technologies we're using on projects right now, and we hope that you learn something from it and it's useful. Go first, Patrick. Yeah, sure.
Hi, I'm Patrick. As Adam said, I'm an engineer here at 3-pillar, and I've been here almost as long as the company's been around. It's about 9 years now. So before that, I've had various stints at other companies in this area. 20 years roughly overall. So done a bunch of different things, including Meteor. Recently, we've used it on a couple projects and had a lot of great success with it. So actually, there's a project currently in progress now that Derek is still engaged in. So we're it's a very interesting technology. So how many of you guys have actually heard of Meteor? Yeah. Adam. Derek. Good. All right, a few.
Well, I used it for a side project before this one. So.
Oh, really?
Yes.
How many of you guys have actually used it in an application? Nobody. Oh, okay, Derek. Good job.
In production, thousands of users.
Mostly in China.
Thousands of users.
Yes. So, okay, well, good. So this does not assume that you know anything about it. So hopefully I won't lose you too quickly. So Meteor basically is a full-stack web application platform. What distinguishes it from other platforms that may purport to be full-stack is that it provides very fast, efficient access to the data, to your data on the client and the server in a very transparent way. So you can access the data from the client using the same API that you would use on the server. So it uses common technologies that you may be familiar with, React, Angular, or Angular. They have their own rendering engine called Blaze. It uses Node.js on the back end, and MongoDB is the data store on the back end currently. They are working on plugging in other data stores, so you'll be able to use SQL, NoSQL, or REST, anything in a data source agnostic way. So that's very powerful. So everything is JavaScript based. Node on the server, and then on the front end there's a, as I said, a JavaScript API. So it's a very powerful thing, because what you get is the ability to run your application on browser, mobile, and desktop. And the code that you're writing actually is very similar whether it's executing on the server or on the client. So, very powerful. Any questions so far? Feel free to stop me if you guys have any questions. Okay. So, why would you want to use Meteor? Essentially what it does is it gives you the ability to focus on sort of the interesting parts of developing an application. And it can do all the sort of the grunt work for you. Actually, literally, you don't need to use grunt. Little joke there. So because you have this transparent access to your data from the client and the server, it basically manages all the communication between the client and the server in terms of syncing your data, invoking remote procedure calls and things like that. All that plumbing is built in and works very nicely together because it's part of the framework. A lot of the things that you would spend way too much time on as a developer and a DevOps engineer is things like packaging, minification, concatenation, all that stuff that you typically do in building a front-end application. All that's essentially automatic. Out of the box, it all just works. Of course, you can customize all these things as you would need, but out of the box, it just works. So that removes the need for grunt or gulp, or whatever you prefer. You don't need power, things like that.
Yeah, if you're doing scripting in that case, is it just an NPM scripting type of stuff, or is it its own thing?
Yeah, well, I'll get to that in a minute, but it does integrate with NPM, so you can use any node package. You can import that directly into the application. It does have its own package management system called Atmosphere. I think that's on the next slide. We'll get to that. Other things that you get out of the box for free, again, customizable or not, if you prefer, is things like session and user management. It even will generate a default UI for you, so you can basically get a login screen, forgot password, registration, OAuth authentication if you prefer, or password-based authentication. All that stuff is very easy to set up with default configuration, and then you can customize it pretty extensively. Or if you want to roll your own, you can certainly do that as well. But it's flexible enough that you can do what you want with some level of customization or configuration. It offers things like email. You can send out email notifications using. They have an internal API where you can integrate with external email service providers as well. So internationalization, stuff like that. So it does have a lot of flexibility, but it's also opinionated. So they do have recommendations for specific technologies that it does integrate, that you can choose from to integrate with. So for instance, there is the option to use React versus Angular versus Blaze. There's still some debate in the community about, I wouldn't say there's a definitive preference for one versus the other at this point, but Blaze is basically Meteor's own built-in rendering engine, which is very simple and powerful and easy to use, but Meteor is no longer adding additional features to it. So React and Angular tend to be more, are gaining a little more traction in the Meteor space. So in addition to all the packaging and build stuff you get built in, you get other things that make it really easy to develop on the platform. So things like live reloading. Any change to code that you make on either the client or the server is automatically hot deployed to your local environment and reunified if you want, or actually in the development environment it would probably be unified because it's just easier to debug that way. But if you want to deploy it to any environment, whether it's a local environment, staging environment, or even production, there's the built-in build system that makes it very easy to do all that as well. easy to learn. Its learning curve is very low. It's, as I said, it's all JavaScript based, and it uses technologies that either are easy to learn if you don't know them, or if you do know them, that's great too. But that's easy. Questions? No? Okay. So diving into a little bit more about how the client and the server communicate with each other. Basically, it's a publish-subscribe model that gets your data between the client and the server. And it does that in a very transparent way. So you don't, in a lot of cases, have to think about where your data is. You just have to access it and know that it will synchronize between the client and the server. Obviously, because there's some magic going on, it doesn't work exactly the way you expect. That's a little trickier. I think Derek has probably encountered some of the trickiness with that. But
yeah, so what is the technology that's being used for that automatic? Is it like sockets or?
That's
Sorry.
line number 2.
Oh.
So the
I need to learn how to read now.
So the mechanism that it uses to communicate through publish, subscribe, and invoking methods is called Distributed Data Protocol, or DDP for short. It's basically, it's a WebSocket that's sending JSON back and forth. So nothing fancy really. It's actually a very simple protocol, and there's lots of tools that are specifically built for Meteor that allow you to monitor the traffic going back and forth, and you can even see the magic behind the curtain, so to speak. But basically what it gives you is automatic synchronization of your data between the client and the server. So on the client side, there's something called Mini-Mongo, which is basically a simplified version of the Mongo API. So that's how it allows you to access your data using the same API as the client and server. So for instance, if you made a change to some data collection on the client, then that change would initially be made in Mini-Mongo so that the user sees it right away. And then the framework would then be responsible for synchronizing that change up with the server. If for some reason the server had a conflict, like some other user would change the same data, then the server would report back, and that change would get reverted to client side. But all that, all the things that normally you would have to code yourself to deal with that, including implementing REST endpoints on the server, REST client on the client, all that stuff is basically for free. That said, though, you can use REST if you want to, but it's really not recommended for communicating with the Meteor client, between the Meteor client and the Meteor server, because the DDP protocol is really the much better way of doing that. But you can use, on the server side, you can use REST to communicate with external systems through the client side if you prefer it. So you do have that flexibility if you need it. Obviously with all this data flying back and forth between the client and the server, you may be concerned about security. So there's fine-grained control over what the server will allow you to get and set in terms of your data on the server. So you can say, certain types of users might be able to edit certain documents or certain parts of documents even, and then if they're fetching data, then depending on what type of user you are, you might get a different subset of data coming back. Not at all, just depending on whatever permissions you want to set up. But again, the mechanism of assigning roles and such to users and their permissions is there's a built-in mechanism for that. So makes it very easy to hook up security. In terms of view engines, I mentioned these previously. There's basically 3 options. There's React, Angular, and Blaze. Blaze is, as I said, still supported by Meteor in terms of bug fixes, but they're not planning on adding any new features. React, I think, might have a slight edge over Angular in terms of adoption, but they're both first-class citizens in the Meteor space. So
I'd be interested. Can we get a show of hands? How many people are using React? right now, or have used React on things? Anybody?
Nobody.
All right, Derek.
Derek.
You're just showing off.
You're
Yeah.
just-
How about Angular?
Angular.
Anybody using Angular? Oh,
All right.
But I'm not using React under Meteor.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, no, that's it. I have not used React or Angular. React under Meteor. I have used Angular and Blaze. Angular is interesting because of the way Meteor has its own reactive model for syncing your data with your view, and obviously Angular has its own. They do play nicely with each other, but you have to be kind of aware of those models and how they fit together. So it's not exactly like writing a plain vanilla Angular application. It's not exactly like writing a Blaze Meteor application.
Does Blaze have like an end-of-life data set? Or
No, and really even that there's been a lot of flux in the last year about whether Blaze would continue to have new features or not. But so just recently they sort of settled on not adding new features to Blaze. So, but I've not heard anything about dropping support for it entirely. Again, I mentioned this a little bit previously. So package management. Atmosphere is Meteor's own package management system, somewhat analogous to NPM, which is Node's package manager. But it's only for Meteor-specific packages. So it's basically Wild West in terms of what can go into it, much like NPM. So you will find a pretty wide variation of packages in terms of quality and freshness. So as of Meteor 1.3, which came out in the last year, a few months, you can use any Node package directly and natively in Meteor. So that opens up a huge ecosystem of packages written for Node. Not necessarily Meteor specific, but doesn't preclude you from putting Meteor specific packages in NPM. And in fact, there are plans to move away from Atmosphere entirely and migrate everything over to NPM. So that will be your one-stop shop for Meteor packages. But in terms of what's in Atmosphere now, there's kind of a combination of native packages that were written specifically for Meteor. And then some are just wrappers around any of the open source libraries that are out there. But they typically will, even if they're wrappers around the library, they will make them more Meteor-like, so they play nicely with Meteor. And you're free to, of course, write your own package as well, which is pretty simple to do. So, any questions about that? The NPM packaging is really, that was a huge step forward because a lot of the, as I said, a lot of the packages that are in Atmosphere are stale. Like if they're wrappers around jQuery or something like that, they might update whenever someone gets around to it because it's community supported. Whereas NPM is obviously kept up to date, so you can pull in the latest of anything whenever you want. Okay, so mobile. So if you want to build your application for Android or iOS, then it's very easy to do that. There's a plugin that integrates with Cordova, or previously known as PhoneGap, if you're familiar with that. So it's very straightforward to get your app onto a mobile device. It also supports Ionic, which is leverages Cordova to provide a more native-like experience. So anyone familiar with Ionic at all? No? Yeah? Oh, okay. Have you ever used it? You are using it? Oh, okay. Do you like it? Yeah? Yeah? Cool. So, no?
I'm going to ask him that.
Oh, okay. Do you mean you haven't used it?
No, I know.
Disappointing.
I know.
All right. And you can even use what's the desktop wrapper? Oh, that NIST is written.
Yeah.
Starts with an E. Electron.
There you go.
There we go. So there is a package that will integrate with Electron, so you can run your application as a native Windows application or Mac, whatever you prefer. So one of the cool things about mobile applications is because they're hybrid, you can actually hot deploy using Meteor's deployment mechanism any of the non-native code, so all your JavaScript, your HTML, your CSS, all that stuff can basically be automatically pushed out to your apps out in the field without having to publish a new version of the app to the App Store. It's a nice process. And it's smart about figuring out whether the code that you're deploying can be deployed safely. So if for instance, you're deploying a new version of Meteor itself or some native code, then it won't push that code to the device if the version doesn't match. So it'll wait for the native app to get upgraded before it shuts down the code. So very fancy. Testing. So as you might imagine, for a framework that's kind of blurs the lines between the client and the server, testing also works fairly transparently between the client and the server, so you can run tests both clients with both the client's code and the server code. You can leverage all the tools that you hopefully would be familiar with for testing front-end applications or back-end node applications. So you can use Mocha as your test runner, Chai is an assertion library, something like that. Phantom.js is a headless browser that allows you to run the tests from a command line or a continuous integration server or something like that. Those are just recommendations. Like I said, Meteor is opinionated, so they recommend these tools, but you're certainly free to use others as well. So they have a test mode that you can run Meteor in that will basically set up Meteor to run in a way that makes it conducive to running these tests. And then it will either report the results to a browser window if you'd like, or to a console for a CI type build. So, testing. All right, so on the operations side, in terms of deployment, there are many different options. Perhaps the most recommended, or often recommended, is Modulus, which is a platform as a service. They host many types of applications, Meteor being one of them. But the main components that you would need to run to run a Meteor application are obviously Node, MongoDB for your data store, and then some sort of web server. You can run Node as a web server, but typically in a production environment with Nginx or something like that. So Modulus has all of that built in. So they'll host your Mongo database, they'll host your web server, they'll host your Node server as well. But they do have the flexibility to, if you prefer hosting your Mongo database somewhere else, then you can do that as well. Second option is Meteor Galaxy. So this is Meteor's own hosting framework, which does not offer a hosted Mongo service, so you have to use another one. They recommend either MLab or Compose, both of which are very well regarded for hosting Mongo databases. One of the nice things about Galaxy is that it offers monitoring basically built in, so you can monitor performance and error reporting and stuff like that. If you don't want to do that, you can either host it yourself to varying levels of automation. Heroku, AWS, DigitalOcean, many of those. So it's not a huge amount of effort to set that up yourself, but the Modulus and Galaxy just typically are lighter weight in terms of operational work.
How about AWS? Or not AWS, Azure.
I don't know about Azure. Probably. There's nothing. These are all standard technologies, so there's nothing really that would preclude you from using any sort of cloud service. So I'll see why it doesn't work. So in terms of automating your deployments, there's an open source tool called Meteor Up. Meteor Up X is a variation of that, which is Docker-based, so it'll create a Docker image and run that on any of these cloud-based services, basically. So that's a good option for automating your workflow. Hedera is a very big player in the Meteor space, and they do a lot of different things. In terms of debugging, you can debug your client and your server code, or at least the interaction between the two, so you can monitor things like CPU usage, memory usage, all the data that's going back and forth through BDP. You can see all that happening within a browser-based interface. It has error reporting and alerts, so if any errors occur either on your client or your server, you can report those. You can trigger alerts based on high CPU usage or errors and things like that. There's profiling, so it'll monitor your performance, identify bottlenecks and things like that. You can even do remote debugging, which I've not tried. You ever tried that?
No.
So, no, that's too fancy. So in a production environment, you can actually remotely connect to a server, I guess a client as well, and debug, so helpful for troubleshooting.
Just getting local debugging on the server is a little challenging. Hence the no, I haven't done it. It is very doable, but I mean, it's the same.
Yeah.
You and I sat there.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, Chrome sits there. So.
Yeah. So
Doable.
anyway, so they have various tiers that their pricing. Their free tier gives you, I think it's functionally completed, but you only get the last 24 hours of data. The upper tiers give you higher levels of support and longer data retention. Still, great thing to check out. That they also offer educational resources for Meteor, like how to optimize performance and security for your application, and just learning more about it. So that's a great resource to check out. In terms of support, so that Meteor itself is used in a wide variety of production applications in production now, so it's definitely production ready. It's been around since 2014. We're in version 1.3, but their versioning scheme is like going from 1.2 to 1.3 was a huge difference. So they're conservative in their version numbering. The Meteor itself is backed by an organization called the Meteor Development Group. They have like 30-some million of funding, so they're doing very well. Their Galaxy hosted service is a good source of income now, so they're getting good funding from that as well. So they do offer paid support and consulting services. If you're interested in that as well. It is the most starred web application framework on GitHub.
Ooh, stars.
Stars are good, right? Yeah, I mean, defining a web application framework,
Yeah.
I think there were like 20 or 30 something. I mean, Rails, Django, things like that. So it's
not the most starred project.
No. I don't know what the most starred project is, but it's like 40,000 stars. I think people are interested in it. It's definitely got a very wide adoption. So the future. One of the most exciting things that's coming up, which is currently in a technical preview mode now, is something called Apollo. And what that'll do is it'll allow you to access any data source, whether it's SQL, NoSQL, REST, whatever, through a common API based on GraphQL, which is based on Facebook's. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But, so it's actually a sister project that's not tied specifically to Meteor, although obviously it plays very nicely with Meteor. But you can use it as I think they call it an open source data stack, data application stack, something like that. So it's basically it's a whole ecosystem around running or accessing your data in a very consistent, easy way for modern applications. So Since it's in technical preview, it's not ready for production, but it's definitely something to keep your eye on. So, another thing that they're working on as an organization is encouraging more core development outside of the Meteor development group. As of now, it is an open source project. They don't have a sort of a clear-cut way of encouraging people outside of the organization to connect code to the project. So they are working on that because they want to encourage more outside developers to contribute as well. But a lot of the packages that are in Atmosphere and NPM obviously are all community supported. So there's still a extensive support from the community just outside of the core. So, and as I mentioned previously, migrating from Atmosphere to NPM is another big thing that's coming up. They're still in the design stages on that. It doesn't sound like that's coming soon. There are a lot of packages in Atmosphere, and I guess maybe one potential complexity there is that a package written for Meteor is written usually specifically for one of the rendering engines, either React or Angular or Blaze, if there's any UI associated with it. So depending on which rendering engine you choose, that precludes you from using certain packages. I guess that's not really specific to Atmosphere itself, but that's the nature of the packages. If they have a UI component, they obviously only work for the engine that they're looking for. So, and then the last thing is Meteor 1.4 is coming up soon. They say nothing too major. I think in this release they're upgrading Node to version 4 and Mongo to 1.3 or 3.1. Some new version. So that's it. You guys have any questions?
Do you have any code samples?
Well, Derek's the code sample guy. I didn't want to spend too much time. What I can do is I can share this slide deck and provide some supplemental resources. But there's some great tutorials on the Meteor.com site. There's a Meteor guide, which is linked directly from that site, and they have tons of great documentation.
That's probably the best place to start.
Yeah, they're what's that? Meteor.com, yep. And there are at least three tutorials on that site, one for React, one for Angular, one for Blaze, depending on the department. And actually, Angular 1 and Angular 2. So you can even choose which flavor of Angular you like. So those tutorials are really good for understanding all the basic concepts of Meteor. You end up building the to-do MVC or the Seminole Hello World app. So,
good.
Yeah.
I will say, so to-do, to-do is the seminal one. There's one I found somewhere that was, it was basically, make Slack in a browser, right? And extremely quick and easy with Meteor. And it just, you're just amazed. It's like, I had to do so much, to try to get, a single, like an application with a single WebSocket. I remember a long time ago to get that, a real live application that doesn't require Flash, that type of application. And to get like Slack running in a browser, hello world, not all the fancy features, topics, and all that. Sort of that kind of engine. It was a really good tutorial and it just blew my mind and I wrote it about 2 seconds.
Yeah, building a somewhat non-trivial application like to-do MVC takes way less effort than it would take in any other framework because it's just designed to remove all the barriers to making that happen. Not all the barriers, but a lot of the ones that slow you down, like setting up the plumbing and for building and deploying and pulling in various frameworks. And
if you have something happening or you want something happening on one person's web page, and then sort of that immediate change across lots of people's web pages is
it's
amazing.
It does that in a very efficient way, and it's easy to do. So, yeah. All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Frank.
Oh. All right. There's one more.
It's not really, it's not an easy question, it's a general question. So it's WebSockets, which is, I was just thinking about when we talk about WebSockets and we talk about mobile. So is that a persistent, permanent socket? So I've got a phone, am I maintaining a high energy state antenna while I have my app running?
Yeah, I mean, it is an open socket. Socket, yes.
Yeah.
But the data coming across there is very lightweight. So
Right. Yeah. Traffic.
In terms of bandwidth, it's very small, and it's resilient to interruptions in the network. So if your socket gets dropped, it'll reconnect.
Or I mean, when I pull up my computer, I put it in my backpack, and I get home and I open up my computer, boom, application up and running live.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything special. That's the plumbing takes care of
Yeah.
the mechanics of connecting and reconnecting the socket. So. All right. All right. Derek?
All right.
Do you want me to stick people or what do you
Huh?
Yeah, let's do the. Where's your thing?
When you break,
Google Drive.
food, drinks.
We need a little break for everything. We break in.
So eat the.
Maybe 5 minutes.
Well, .NET Core like.
Oh.
I just put that in there, though. I had to look it up.
It's newer, so that's
I know. Alright, so. Alright, so just push that button. Alright, and the other thing is.
And Patrick, in case it's working, will you pass the mic to Derek?
Yeah. You're still not sure?
Not sure.
Yeah, we keep clock. I mean, as long as there's a clock on here, then that would be awesome. Yeah, that was perfect. That's trying to emulate the perfect time there.
like a giant clock somewhere.
There is.
You know, like johnnyglad.com.
How's that?
No, it's if you can present our
Is
video.
that a read in a long time?
Blowing my mind.
All the ones that we've been looking at.
We are at least getting audio from somewhere.
Well, that's
So, we got that
We're
going.
about to get
pick up very far away, so it could still be where you're at.
Yeah.
Kind of scary.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it sounds like the person's right next to me. You know, they're right there. Go hang out with the mom.
Great.
It goes up in the hand state.
Yeah.
Communication, then it stops. You're right. So if you does it know to stop? Or does it sit there and get a
Probably.
I imagine that would be a problem if somebody would thought.
I just need that.
I will try that. I think the web page, that's what I'm talking about. Just see what it sits there and try to do this.
Yeah, I have. Like I said, I do that all the time. Obviously, so I mean, website. Oh, yeah, I read. Exactly. I mean, open up and whatever you are having a lot of triggers and like I said, I turn off. My phone certainly doesn't work. When I hit that site, I'm like, I know I have an application that actually makes a heavy GPS message. And yes, my phone brought like if you find it will that's very helpful. I have it there.
Which part of that? Sorry, which part are you saying?
Yes. And it's basically trying to get the most their GPS. It's simple.
Battery nominated for next conversation. Sure.
I said you were going to speak.
Well, that's interesting. That's, yeah, I just had another one. I mean, this is interesting too. So you guys are, so it's switching FPM. So it's built on top of a lot of other things. So that's the good thing is it's not somebody trying to build a IPM silo that's thing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, it is on. you do the flip side is you get, that's one of the things that gets a lot of heated debate in the community is, should we use this render engine or that? Should we use this or that? Right? You have this religious thing, and both sides fighting out. And it might be easier to build something that's more, but no, it is very good. All right, let's, looks like we're, all right, so I'm going to go on that core. Go on that core.
Is that like,
Go on that core. All right, so I'm going to grab. All right, looks like. Are we all back in?
yeah.
All right, yeah. I thought I just want to make sure I wasn't carrying on without someone. All right. Excellent. Well, thank you, as Patrick O'Meara. Thank you very, very much for everyone coming in. My name is Derek Tiffany. I'm a technical lead here at 3Pillar. I've been with 3Pillar 5.5 years. I know. I'm new here. Still feeling my way around. So I'd like to talk a little bit today about .NET Core, or .NET Core if you prefer. So we have been running around the office. I personally have been very excited about .NET Core, and yes, I've been, Sam and some of the others, I guess, heard my excitedness, and I guess I'm so excited that I just kind of run my words together sometimes and say .NET Core, .NET Core. So at some point there was an email that went out that yes, we'll do a .NET Core meetup. So let's see here. So I am gonna, I guess, dive into things just a little bit here. Maybe a quick overview. So what is .NET Core? .NET Core is a cross-platform, free and open source managed software framework similar to .NET Framework. That's from Wikipedia. Copy and paste it, I will admit. .NET GitHub.io, a modular cross-platform open source implementation of the .NET Framework. So I will say, it seems very consistently marketed. So every place that I hit, yes, these are the keywords that keep coming up. I imagine someone at Microsoft might have gone and edited the Wikipedia page or the GitHub page. So Microsoft is very good like that. So yes, modular, framework, cross-platform. Okay, so wasn't .NET all these things? I heard .NET was modular, .NET was a framework, .NET was in theory cross-platform, right? You can write a CLR for whatever platform you want to. Hey. All right, so yes, .NET is also open source. Yes, there is that. It does only have 1,000 stars on GitHub. I just looked it up just now. Although that is for the core .NET GitHub repo. So there is a there's Microsoft.NET repo. There's a VS Code repo, which is Visual Studio Code, which is kind of neat, which I'll be showing.
Wait, but Visual Studio itself is open source?
Visual Studio Code is open source. So
what's that?
Yes. So that is an IDE, cross-platform IDE, which will run on Mac, which will run on Linux, which will. I don't think it will run on my iPhone, but it will run on most of the major desktop platforms out there. Let's see here, ASP.NET MVC, ASP.NET Entity Framework, all the sort of standard frameworks that you're familiar with. Everything that Microsoft seems to be doing right now around .NET at all is open source. I don't think they're open sourcing Office anytime soon, or Exchange Server, or anything like that, but I am not finding much of anything in their new development stack that is not open source right now. So yes, so open source, as I alluded to earlier, yes, in .NET, well, in theory, you could write a CLR for Mac. .NET Core, yeah, go to the GitHub repo, and yes, the .NET CLR, the .NET Core CLR for Mac is there under that. Let's see here. Cool. All right, cool. So I'll talk a little bit. Now it's time to ask some questions. All right, so I'd like to kind of get a feeling from the people that are here. So these were the things I picked. So I'm going to run through this, see if people raise their hands. So do you have a bug in your .NET Core application in prod that you have to fix right now? All right, awesome. Because if you do, you should go home. I'm not going to be able to help you with that. All right, so are you using .NET Core in a project right now? Or maybe just played with it, wrote a hello world? All right, cool. Are you evaluating maybe whether or not to use .NET Core in a future project? Or thinking about it, looking at it? All right. Yeah, maybe you're just here, you just want to learn a little bit about .NET Core, you just want to hear about it, or maybe not. Maybe you could take it or leave it. All right, cool. Let's see here. Where's the Meteor session? All right. And then my last one is, squirrel. You're here for something else, food, T-shirts, just to talk to other developers in the area. Okay, all right. Previous .NET experience. People maybe used .NET before. All right. All right, cool. Very good. All right. Thank you. Anything that I missed? Any reasons why people were here that I might have missed?
Because I like it here.
Can you write that? How do I invite you back? I need how many likes? Okay. How many stars do I need to become the most popular person ever? All right, so current status. All right, so this has been actually rather amusing to watch. And yes, if anyone has fun watching technology projects. So .NET 5, release candidate 1, was released November 2015. By the way, has anyone been watching this? All right, so .NET Core was then announced in January 2016. .NET Core release candidate 2 was, and actually I think that is actually a typo. It was released in May of 2016, so it was just released. And .NET Core RTM is supposed to be released here in 4 days, June 27th. Along with this comes so the fun part about the November release was, yes, it was supposed to be .NET 5 with Entity Framework 7, MVC 5, 6, I guess MVC 6. Yes, it's hard to remember all the version numbers. Someone said, all right, it is .NET Core, and it's Entity Framework Core, and it is MVC, ASP.NET Core MVC. There we go. They've even changed some of the names of some of the other components as well. All right, so that was fun. And what's in a name? Well, there was a little bit of, this goes back to sort of who has used .NET previous. It is a very different change than .NET 4 to 4.5. Yeah, it is a very significant, let's see here. Yes, all right, so yes, good. I did put a couple of quotes here. All right, so, so yes, so a couple interesting quotes here from Microsoft. Yes, they say you should move the view from Entity Framework 6 to Entity Framework 7 or Entity Framework Core or whatever the name ends up being as a port rather than an upgrade. Right? This is different. This is not the same as having moved before. Migrating from ASP.NET MVC to ASP.NET Core MVC, multi-step process. And this article covers just the initial step. I could pull up the article. It was very long. Additional articles cover migrating the configuration and identity code. Those articles are very long, and it's very different from the standard Microsoft, hey, easy peasy, upgrade your .NET and you're done. And that is a large part of that reason for that name change. From ASP.NET 5, from .NET 5 to .NET Core, from whatever 7 to whatever Core. It is. Yes, it is not insignificant to upgrade a complex application. Hello world, okay, a complex application. On the other hand, nothing. Yeah, there's a little bit of code sample. That would compile no matter, whoops, sorry, the using, there we go. All right, so using ASP.NET Core.MVC, that would compile under .NET 4.5, and actually it would still compile under .NET. Anyway, yes, if I change that using a little bit, I mean, the code syntax looks very similar, the design patterns.
So the other thing that made this all a little confusing is you're still supporting .NET Framework for .x. And so in some cases you're saying, yeah, you can build a new ASP.NET app. You can build it on Core, or you can build it on this. They're both there. You just can't do some things on one or the other. And so, yeah, you know, they're kind of forking it and trying to support both at the same time. That's confusing. The other thing maybe we were going to talk about that was a big deal was this last release candidate that came out. They substantially changed how it worked. Like, we used to have a JSON file. We don't anymore. We have something else, which usually...
Well, DNX. DNX?
Yeah.
Now it's .NET.
So for those people that saw a release candidate meant we're doing bug fixes, no, it was it was very much an editorial change to how they thought it should work. So a lot of people are upset.
Yep.
So anyway, so.
No, and that is, yes, that is a very good point, because yes, a lot of, and yes, the code, the stuff that you sit there and write day in, day out, a lot of that is very seamless. I mean, you could get into a hidden issue with a little bit of a change in reflection between the various versions. Okay. No big deal, change the code just a little bit. But yes, the system-wide, and when you look at the entire system, the build system, and various dependencies, that's the big thing as well. And a lot of people, when they talk about .NET, they're not just talking about .NET. Core C# right application. A lot of people, when they talk about .NET, they're talking about the entire ecosystem. That's part of why people love to use Microsoft and use .NET. I know for me, Microsoft for a long time was the quickest, easiest way that I had to write a hello world, welcome to my database for an enterprise, a small, not huge. Java was the easiest way for me to write hello, 1 million users, welcome to my database. I actually a lot of times had problems scaling some of the Microsoft stuff out that way. But yes, it's that whole framework that is very attractive to people. And yes, there is a lot of components in that framework as an entirety that are changing and have changed. All right, yeah, and that's here we go. All right, so yes, that's what some of this gets at right here. I don't know. It's almost like leads one to the other. All right, so I mean, just silly things. I mean, MSDN and the Microsoft website woefully out of date. I mean, you pull up the .NET Core information on MSDN, it's non-existent. I mean, to put it frankly. Now, on the other hand, Gitter. When I go into GitHub, GitHub issues and Gitter, I mean, I can pull up. I got a problem with a .NET Core component. I can, quite frankly, usually I can pull up the guy who wrote the code in about 5 minutes. Yeah, so yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Yes. So there's something to be said for the new way. I guess let's see here. Some of the down later. Yeah, was I don't know. Various components. Yeah, now we have Gulp, we have Bower, we have Webpack, we have Node, we have NPM instead of NuGet, project templates. I mean, that's another one that actually, I have some people that are still struggling with this. They expect to have the project template, click new web app, and yes, obviously you got to fill in some things. It's not going to give you a whole application, but it'll give you a good start. The current templates, when you click new, are absolutely horrendous. They have this mixed match of technology. Now, on the other hand, the Yeoman templates are pretty darn good. I mean, they are kept up to date, and there is a huge variety. But again, just people who are used to the traditional ecosystem and the way that it's been, you know, I'll sometimes sort of struggle with some of these. I mean, and like I said, it's very similar to a lot of the technologies that or I guess methodologies and places that people using non-Microsoft technologies have been going to and using all the time. But sometimes it is a little bit challenging for people who have been purely in that Microsoft environment to get used to. Yeah, it was Windows, well now it's Mac and Linux. Awesome. All right. Yes. I just, all right.
You're giving it all away.
I'm still getting used to my Mac. Can I just clear on this? All right, open source, poll status. All right. Okay. Yes. So. All right. So yes. So some lessons learned so far. So. I still feel like I see a couple slides. Oh well. So we do have. Let's see here. We actually have an application in production. Like I said, it is in friendly production. So anyone can access it. I don't think there's been an announcement yet. So it was actually written using release candidate 1, which, yes, had that go live stamp of approval. So we went live. And yes, now we are struggling a little bit. But not too much. Fortunately, we did keep up to date as that was happening. One of the reasons, actually, the project, there was a couple issues because we were, at the same time as we were developing on release candidate 1, we had the NuGet feeds for the nightly builds of .NET Core. And yes, sometimes I would forget that and check something new that broke the old build. So that did slow us down a little bit in development. The plus side of that is that project is updating actually very quickly, and we expect that our .NET Core release will be very, very close to the RTM release.
Was there any reason why you want .NET Core? Was it just because it's cool? It's new.
All right, so if you're writing a new application or working on a new project, use .NET Core. We went with that because it's expected to be a long-term application, and quite frankly, the rewrite, as even though it might have slowed us down a little bit at the start, the rewrite, if we had written this with .NET 4.5, the rewrite over to Core would be significant. It would be non-trivial. Yeah, I mean, there is the, you know, if you're going to have an application that you're supporting long-term, then yes, using .NET 4.5 right now for a new greenfield application to us seems like a no-go. Okay, unless there's reason not to. So this is, yes, big lesson learned that we got into. And again, on that application, we didn't have any of this. We were pretty greenfield. So one thing, we have another application right now that we are building. .NET Core from the start, that is expected to be a fairly significant release in web application. One of the reasons maybe not to, NoSQL database. Well, this was a fun one. So NE Framework 7, I actually remember, it was in the back of my head, about a year and a half ago, they said, hey, NE Framework 7, non-relational databases. These are cool. We're not going to call them NoSQL because I think the Microsoft, my marketing department, just NoSQL, they just won't allow anyone in Microsoft to actually say NoSQL. So non-relational databases. And they're even, actually, I didn't put it in here, but if you go to the NE Framework GitHub, you can actually find the commit where they pulled out the Microsoft.NE Framework.Redis connector. Really awesome for this project. So now on that flip side, I can actually go get that commit, so I can get like 80% of the code. Maybe I could ship it, or tweak it, or change it. But yes, I mean, like I know. So setting up a NoSQL database right now under .NET 4.5 significantly quicker and easier to me than under .NET Core. And a lot of this, again, gets to third-party packages, a lot of things outside the immediate framework. And again, because it is a non-trivial port, because it's not easy to upgrade, CMS systems. I mean, that's another, Orchard, I used to have a list of .NET CMSs for some reason readily available to me. But if you go down through the list of, CMS is one of the top, .NET Nuke, there we go, that's another one. If you go through the list of CMSs, because I mean, that's one of the, hey, just give me a CMS. Okay, I mean, those are all, we're working on our .NET Core release. I can tell you Orchard from Microsoft, who is working hand in hand and committing code to the .NET Core repository. Orchard is nowhere near their .NET Core release. Some of the other ones, are way, way far behind. I would actually suspect that, yes, probably some of the closed source proprietary ones will come out first just because they're incentivized. They get to say, we're the first one. A lot of third-party packages that you're kind of used to having and getting up and going fairly quickly, they're not there yet. And actually, I even put a question mark here. GraphQL, I have no clue, because that's the other one, and I keep meaning to investigate this. The project that I'm working on right now, GraphQL, and I thought about it, would be really, really, really nice for this project. And I know under 4.5, I've done it before, I can get that up and running very, very quickly. That ticked in the back of my head last night was, I don't know how easy this is going to be to get going under .NET Core. So yes, a lot of those third-party packages, a lot of things that you might be used to doing quickly, they're just not there yet. So it's definitely worth investigating. And of course, there's other reasons too. I mean, sometimes you do have a short-term project. Sometimes you have a project that you're not looking to kind of maintain long-term. Requirements and things are going to change. JavaScript projects. You're going to do a complete rewrite every year. So, maybe you like doing that. In which case, sure. It might be used to, or it certainly might be worthwhile if you know and you sort of plan on kind of complete re-architectures and rewrites and stuff on a regular basis, then yes, maybe it's worthwhile to do a 4.5 project now and re-architect in a year.
There are some parts of framework I don't know if they'll ever pull over too. It's like they were taking their time on WCF, which used to be the whole way you communicated with services. They seem to be dragging the feet on that. I don't know if they ever did a DB port. Did they ever do a DB port? Did they have to use C#? There's a bunch of those, and web forms, which a lot of the old ASP.NET apps out there are web forms, so if you had to move one, they'd kill you. That one they seem to just kind of put their hands behind their back and go, oh, well, I don't think they ever plan on it. I think part of this release is, like when they switched from IE to Edge, was to say, we want to stop testing VBScript every time we do a browser release. I think this is partially them saying, we want to scrape some of that old stuff off the table. Yep. And so that'd be the other thing, just check the pieces of old legacy apps.
Well, it's certainly, yes.
If you're thinking about it.
Yes, so I will say, right. If writing in a new application.
Yes,
and that is certainly right. If you're looking at porting an old application, then I actually can't think of a super compelling reason right now today why you would port an old application, other than it's shiny and sparkly, it's new. You've been going this long without, I think you could probably wait 6 months. Just until a little bit of the dust settles. And now, I will say yes, 6 months from now, 8 months from now, there might be a much more compelling reason to start the porting process of old applications. We have been very fortunate, I think, in that we get to do new projects, greenfield projects. And so yes, the things that we've learned so far have been by applying to new projects. Yeah, not right now. None of our .NET 4.5 projects, I think, we really significant. Yeah, we've really looked at, okay, now maybe it's time to think about doing a port. We'll probably be doing those evaluations September, October, November-ish. Once kick the tires and and lessons learned from new projects. Yeah. All right. Any questions? Comments? All right. All right. Let's see here. What time is it? Ooh. All right. That's getting about time. All right. So should we deep dive into .NET architecture? Or look at some code? Maybe I do have some code. Or should we get more beer? What?
Look at some code.
Look at some code.
In VS Code.
All right.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah,
All right. Very good. So that's good because my next slide. All right. Yeah. I didn't prepare the deep dive architecture slide. Yeah. Sorry. Obviously, there's lots of stuff online. We are trying to present this and show information that we've got, like I said, sort of lessons learned. Honestly, if you want that deep dive architecture, there's probably, I'm more of a hands-on coding guy. There are certainly online resources that I would be more than happy to point people towards. All right, yes, so we're going to look at, so I do have a GitHub account here. The code that I'm showing is available on a public repo. Let's see here. And yes, we'll be looking at a .NET Core application with a React single-page application in it. The cool thing here, and this is actually why I started doing this, is that this does include universal or server-side rendering of those JavaScript apps. So we actually are running Node.js within a Microsoft component on our server. And it's rendering the JavaScript app. It's rendering the JavaScript on the server, sending down the DOM to the client, and then the SPA continues to run on the client with any changes. So you get a lot of advantages as far as search engines, performance, just a whole bunch of nice stuff that is actually with React that is their suggested way that
does that too now.
Yeah. So that's with new JavaScript frameworks. That is a very hot isomorphic universal server-side rendering. And how do I get out? Right, so let's see here. My downloads folder, always scary. Let's see here. Yeah, VS Code. I usually see this is why I think it's all. Yeah, this is why I usually just. This is why I always have 20 applications open. So
Yeah, you close down the one you want.
I know. So usually, yes, actually that's the thing. I actually usually have this running 24/7. So it's usually just sitting right there.
Now that was the most impressive part of this for me was this is Visual Studio running on a Mac.
Like this is Visual Studio running on a Mac. Although it's a little, you don't have.
Yeah. Hit Command Plus.
So it doesn't include a sharing for that. It's a port of Adam.
That's
Port of Adam. So it's not really.
It's not really.
Yes, it isn't. I mean, it is and it isn't. I will say, when I run Visual Studio on my PC now, I actually don't tend. I tend not to use all the additional fluff in there that I used to. So I use Visual Studio on my PC now as a pretty fancy text editor with some nice syntax checking. And yeah, I now drop to command line on my PC the overwhelming vast majority of the time. I guess the SQL Explorer is still nice, but that's just because I didn't install the Explorer that I have over here. So other than the SQL Explorer, I tend not to use some of the other stuff in Visual Studio. All right. So the application does look, and again, very similar to a Microsoft MVC application. We've got our controllers, right? We've got our views. Let's see here. And they all. Let's see here. Oh yeah. Okay. All right. So this is an SPA. So our view doesn't have a whole lot of stuff in it. Let's see here. No, where's there? Yeah, there's, okay, so the rest, actually, the stuff that there is a lot of in here is all this very setup stuff. So instead of just one nice simple dot solution with a dot project file, now all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I've got Webpack, BabelRC, this one, oh, TSD, there we go, that's another nice one. Yeah, exactly. This one, most of my projects actually have more, because usually I've got Gulp and Bauer in there as well. This one I don't have Gulp and Bauer, so yes, a huge amount of this sort of shell framework code is in all of this fun stuff here. And yes, now the end result of all that, let's see here, where's my apps? There we go. Yes, and then since this is an SPA, so we do have some nifty fun React components. Let's see here. So yes, this is what React. Now this is the same thing that React would look like if it was .NET or not. So there's nothing new under the sun here. The fun part, though, this is the part that actually the boot client and the boot server. This is the part that will actually run that React component on the server before feeding it up to the client. So those are fun. And I will actually, let me pull up, see it.
.NET Run.
.NET Run. Well, I could do, should I do a Mac? Should I do a build? So .NET Run on the Mac and, yes. So yes, this is the GitHub. Feel free to ping me, say something, issue a pull request. Please, issue a pull request. That would be awesome.
Star it.
I don't need stars. I need pull requests though. Because what I do hope to, and this was started with, and I did note on the GitHub, so this was started with the ASP.NET Core SPA, Yeoman. The big thing that I need to do here, and I've done it on my other projects, and it is really, really cool to see, is to add the unit test and integration test project. And it is really, really awesome to see an in-memory instance of SQLite along with an in-memory instance of the web server run on my Mac and have all those .NET integration tests running on my Mac, because then they can run on my Linux build server in the cloud. They can run, you can deploy a .NET application purely, a .NET Core application purely through AWS code deploy without ever having built it. All right, localhost 5000. Here we go. What's happening? First time all right, yeah. So yes, so the first time you hit the site, it does take a little while to load up. Yay! All right, yes. So and yes, so here we have a lovely instance of. And again, an SPA, this is a weather forecast coming from our .NET, there we go, sample data control, yes. and again, this is very standard .NET code. I've got a API controller returning some nice JSON data, and yeah, it's all running on my Mac. Questions? Sorry, I ran a little bit longer than I wanted to. So, any questions? Anything specifically want to look at, or? Wow, I answered everyone's question. Ask any questions. We're still using Raven. Let's see here, and actually, yeah. So I use
ASPS still.
what others?
Yeah.
Oh, well, is that but is that also?
Oh, for VS Code itself?
Because it looks a lot like
Developer tools. Wow. Hey, if I get a JavaScript, oh my goodness.
Look at that.
This is Wow. Holy moly. So. Yeah.
Let's debug it.
Can I like?
Can you run your app?
That? Oh, really?
It's Electron, right?
That would be wild. It looks an awful lot like Electron.
It's probably Electron.
I mean, this is the exact same way that
I don't know how to do
what's collect? How do I get? What's that? Subscribe. What's in?
Well, it's not running your app.
Yeah. I was just trying to think of something that I could subscribe to some publication real quick. Sorry, so was there something specific you wanted to see under the help?
I was just wondering if it looks a lot like it.
Yeah, I mean that looks a lot like Electron, but no, I don't know either. All I know is it works. It is. I mean, so I don't have it on here. I actually have opened our Meteor application a lot of times under this. The TypeScript support. I mean, well, Microsoft and TypeScript. It is very nice. I've opened one application here with really nice and really awesome. I had another Meteor application for some reason they didn't get along well, and I just never. Typically use IntelliJ on a project, so I never took the time to figure out why. But yeah, I have started using VS Code with some JavaScript projects, especially because it supports all the linters. I mean, I can. that was the reason why I used it, because it actually the linter that they were using, I was able to get it running under here quicker than I was in IntelliJ, which was really nice.
You could have one if I would call it a package, like Sublime.
Yeah, and that, so I'm sure want to plug in? Submit the code to the GitHub. There you go. It's there the next day. I'm sure there is a plugin. Well, I got a console window there.
Yeah,
there's a whole package system for a plugin. So now, like I said, I do. One thing I will admit is that again, I do tend to here. I tend to I know the command. I do my code editing in Visual Studio Code, but then a lot of the other managing of dependent. I don't use NuGet. I use npm. npm-g install webpack. There we go. Instead of loading up a NuGet dependency. And in fact, so there is one of the really cool things. Project.json. So all your .NET Core projects are npm projects, and they're available ready. In fact, npm install if you have an NPM package and a NuGet package, because a lot of most people will publish both, the NPM package usually long-term ends up working out better for developers than the NuGet package, just from a portability and quickness. Because I can just do .NET Restore and boom, it's there. Unlike some of the NuGet packages don't work as well with .NET Restore. All right. Awesome. And unless there's any other questions, feel free to ask me if there are afterwards. And thank you all very, very much for coming to our offices. We very much appreciate that.
Nice. Running code.
Running code.
Awesome. Please help us finish the food.
Yes. Any questions for Adam, Patrick, Derek, or I? Please feel free to ask me now. Just email. Help us finish the food. Love to mingle and get to know you a little bit. Meet some people if you have time. If not, great seeing you, and we're looking forward to obviously catching up at the next one. All right. Thank you.